I want you to picture something familiar. It's the end of the month. You open your banking app not because you want to, but because you feel like you should. You already kind of know what you're going to see. The numbers aren't disastrous, they're not great either. Just uncomfortable. Again. You think back to the budget you made, the one that looked perfect on paper. Categories neatly planned, spending limits that felt reasonable at the time. You told yourself, this month will be different. And yet, here you are. Not because you're irresponsible, not because you don't care, but because somehow real life didn't follow the spreadsheet. And after a while, a quiet thought creeps in. Maybe budgeting just doesn't work for me. If that sounds familiar, I want you to know something right away. You're not broken. You're not bad with money. And you're definitely not alone. Budgeting doesn't fail because people are lazy. It fails because it was never designed for how humans actually behave. Most of us are taught that budgeting is the foundation of good money management. Track every dollar, control every category, stick to the plan no matter what. And if it doesn't work, the assumption is simple. You didn't try hard enough, but that belief misses something important. Budgeting is often built on an unrealistic version of you. A calm version, a predictable version. A version that never has a stressful week at work, never gets invited to a last-minute dinner, never feels tired, bored, lonely, or overwhelmed. Real life doesn't operate that way. Money decisions don't happen in a vacuum. They happen when you're exhausted after a long day, when your kid needs something unexpectedly, when your friends are celebrating something, when convenience feels more valuable than saving $5. Budgeting assumes that information changes behavior, that if you know where your money should go, it will go there. But psychology tells us something very different. Knowing and doing are not the same thing. Most people don't overspend because they don't understand math. They overspend because money is emotional. It's tied to stress, identity, comfort, and time. A budget tries to control outcomes without addressing the feelings driving the decisions. Think about how budgets are usually created. They're made on a quiet day, maybe a Sunday afternoon. You're calm, you're optimistic, you're imagining your future self being disciplined and consistent. But your future self is living in a completely different emotional environment. That version of you is dealing with deadlines, social pressure, unexpected problems, and mental fatigue. When you're tired, your brain doesn't want to optimize. It wants relief. This is where budgeting quietly breaks down, because budgets often assume willpower is stable. It's not. Willpower is a limited resource. It gets drained by work stress, decision fatigue, and emotional pressure. By the time you're making real spending decisions, you're not choosing between good and bad. You're choosing between hard and easy. And easy usually wins. Another reason budgeting fails is that it focuses on restriction instead of alignment. Most budgets start with cutting. Cut eating out. Cut fun spending. Cut comfort. The message, even if unintentional, is that enjoying your money is the problem. So every purchase starts to feel like a mistake. That creates guilt, and guilt is not a sustainable financial strategy. When spending feels shameful, people don't stop spending. They stop paying attention. They avoid checking accounts. They delay looking at numbers. They mentally disconnect, and once awareness disappears, control disappears with it. There's also the issue of unpredictability. Life is not consistent month to month. Some months are expensive for reasons you couldn't plan. Travel, medical costs, family needs, social obligations. A rigid budget treats these as failures instead of realities. So when the plan breaks, people blame themselves instead of the plan. Over time, this creates a story. I can't stick to budgets. And that story becomes identity. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Budgeting fails not because you're bad with money, but because it tries to force precision onto a messy human life. Money flows. It doesn't behave. When people do manage to stick to strict budgets, it's often temporary. They white-knuckle their way through a few months, feel deprived, then rebound. Spending spikes. Motivation collapses, and the cycle repeats. That up and down pattern is exhausting. So what actually works? The turning point isn't better discipline. It's a different way of thinking about control. Instead of asking, how do I control every dollar? The more useful question is, how do I reduce the number of decisions I have to fight every day? That shift changes everything. Financial stability isn't built through constant self-control. It's built through systems that work even when you're tired. Think about how your income enters your life. Before you spend anything, it hits your account. From there, every decision requires effort. Every no costs energy. But what if the most important decisions were made automatically? This is where budgeting quietly transforms into something more human. Instead of micromanaging spending, you prioritize direction. Money going towards savings first. Money for fixed needs handled up front. What's left becomes flexible, not forbidden. This removes the feeling of failure when life happens. Another key realization is that awareness matters more than perfection. People assume budgeting is about accuracy, but the real benefit is consciousness, knowing roughly where your money goes, not to punish yourself, but to understand patterns. When you understand patterns, you can adjust your environment instead of relying on willpower. If you overspend on food because you're always tired, the issue isn't discipline, it's energy. If online shopping spikes during stressful weeks, the issue isn't math, it's emotional regulation. Money problems are often life problems showing up in financial form. Once you see that, budgeting stops being about control and starts being about design. Designing your finances so they work with your psychology, not against it. This is also why simplicity matters more than detail. The more complex a system is, the easier it is to abandon. Tracking every category feels productive, but it's fragile. One bad week can derail the entire thing. Simple systems bend instead of break. That's the mindset shift most people miss. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent enough. You don't need to track everything. You need to protect the big things: savings, stability, margin. Once those are handled, the rest doesn't need to be micromanaged. When people stop treating budgeting as a test they can fail, something interesting happens. Their anxiety decreases. They check their accounts more often. They feel less ashamed. And paradoxically, they make better decisions. Not because they're trying harder, but because they feel safer. Safety changes behavior. When money feels constantly tight, the brain goes into short-term mode. Immediate relief becomes more valuable than future benefit. This is why people under financial stress struggle to save, even when they understand the importance. Reducing stress restores long-term thinking. That's why the goal isn't restriction, it's breathing room. So if budgeting has never worked for you, here's a gentler way to think about it. Focus on fewer decisions. Automate what matters. Allow flexibility where life is unpredictable. Track patterns, not perfection. And most importantly, remove shame from the process. Money is a skill learned over time, not a personality trait. You don't fail at budgeting. You experiment with systems until one fits your life. Progress doesn't look like flawless months. It looks like fewer surprises, calmer check-ins, and decisions that feel a little less heavy than they used to. And over time, that calm compounds. Not because you controlled every dollar, but because you stopped fighting yourself. If there's one thing I want you to take away, it's this. Your financial life doesn't need more pressure. It needs more understanding. And once you build systems that respect how you actually live, money stops feeling like something you're constantly getting wrong, and starts feeling like something you can slowly, quietly get better at. That's enough. You don't need perfection. You just need a direction that feels sustainable. And that's how real financial progress begins.